speaker who's an alumnus of our program. She is an MPA graduate of 2001, Sarah Westerberg. She kind of read her bio, and you're going to love to listen to her because she's from England, so she has that wonderful accent that we all get to hear for an hour. She has quite the accomplishments. She went to Oxford and graduated from there, and then came to BYU and has been here ever since, and now you know what she's doing. She's an Associate Dean of Students here at BYU. So I thought I would tell you a little bit of some fun things about her. I asked her, I said, well, how did you go from England to here? Was it your husband? And she said, when I was in England and when I graduated from Oxford, I said to myself, no Americans, no students will I marry. So, because her sisters had done that, and consequently they had moved here. Well, so Heavenly Father, she said, heard her plea, and so what did she get is her husband came on a study abroad and to England, and she married him and then moved here. But she says, I'll only move to the U.S., to America, if we don't live in a wood house or in a basement. Well, that didn't happen either. So she said, everything's been fine though, and she has 3 boys, all redheads, and 1 we don't know on the way. So she is really a busy woman, and her husband is really wonderful. He stays home and takes care of the family, so that is a really nice thing. She's also quite the cook in a few areas. She says she has already perfected macaroni and cheese. She goes around and samples different places, and then she perfects the perfect mac and cheese, and then she won't eat it anywhere else. And then and she's also done the French dip. And those are 2 of my favorite meals, so I've got to go over to her house and eat them pretty soon. So anyway, without further ado, we'd like to welcome Sarah, and if you could remember to put your laptops down, that would be very, very polite. And here she is.
I was somewhat worried that higher education administration had been left till last because it was the leastest of the things that you might be interested in. But then I realized that you had saved the best till last. And so this is probably your last career talk this semester, and so I'm glad to be able to round things out for you with my presentation, Higher Education Administration, a Gateway to Possibilities. In my current position as the Associate Dean of Students here at BYU, I get to work with a variety of different departments and different people, a variety of different students from different backgrounds, and I'll talk some more about that, but I am delighted to have this opportunity to speak to you. The MPA has a very special place in my heart. When I came from the UK, at Oxford you get a master's degree for your bachelor's degree. I know it sounds weird, it is, but it's okay. And so I had that, but I didn't have anything else. And when I arrived in the States, I realized immediately that I would need to get some of this currency, this education, some more of this education that I needed in order to be able to move up and you know, have a career. And even though me being the career person, my husband being the stay-at-home person, was not part of the plan, cancer and some other things thrown into the mix, and 10 years later, I find that I'm best able to support the family and he's best able to take care of the children. And so that's kind of how we arrived at this point. Anyway, I would like to talk to you today about higher education and all of the different possibilities that will lead you to if you're interested. So what is exactly higher education administration? I meet with many, many people who will visit with me and say, you know, I kind of would like to do something like what you do. And they don't really know how to articulate what it is, what it is that they want to do. They just think that it would be really cool to be an Associate Dean of Students, or be a Student Activities Coordinator, or a Student Conduct Officer, or something like that. And there is actually terminology, jargon, it is a discipline, and we do take ourselves pretty seriously. So as a discipline, higher education, this is a correct. I think it's my premature baby bump is knocking. Okay. I'm not even
Before
touching
you
it.
go on, she was just here and said she could fix it, but it would take a few minutes, but the wireless knows.
Oh, this is fine as long as it doesn't jump. Okay.
Okay.
So as a discipline, higher education administration refers to graduate programs that provide coursework in areas such as higher education foundations, administration, governance, and organization law, and college student development theories. So there are actually graduate programs that you can take that are in higher education administration, college student personnel, student development, student counseling, that kind of thing. In practice, though, higher education administration refers to those that provide leadership for and manage the daily operations of colleges and universities. So in your mind, picture anything ASB-ish. Anything in the ASB, registration, records, admissions, financial aid, scholarships, all those kind of things fall into higher education administration. Also falling into that group are what we call student affairs, which is mostly you'll find those functions at BYU in the Wilkinson Student Center. And student affairs is the area that I work in out of higher education administration, and so that's the one I'm going to focus on today. So student affairs is a subdivision within higher education administration. At BYU, our student affairs department is called student life. And within that college, typically you'll find the following areas. You'll find campus life or student affairs, that's where I work. Career services and counseling services, residence life or housing, and at most schools that would include Greek life if they had that available. So student health center and student wellness programs, and then also the university police and campus security. And we work under the direction of the student life vice president. So a bit more detail about what student affairs is, and it's good to know the jargon. I once sat in an interview with a very high-level candidate who was coming in to interview for our Dean of Students position, and so we were having an open interview with all of the staff in the area, and someone asked the candidate what their student affairs philosophy was, and their answer basically led us to believe that they thought that they should be involved in the affairs of students, but they didn't understand that it was actually a discipline, that we have professional associations and organizations, that we have professional journals, that we publish and present, and that we do take ourselves kind of a bit seriously. So student affairs is used to describe the organizational structure or unit of a campus responsible for the out-of-class education of students. So there is an idea that we are educators, and I've got a slide in a couple of slides that will focus more on that, but we do see ourselves as educators outside the classroom. That does tend to antagonize faculty a little bit sometimes, but we do see ourselves as providing vital education. If all we had at the university were academics, then we would be churning out, we may well be churning out dysfunctional people who were maybe very geeky or nerdy and didn't know how to handle themselves in social contexts, didn't know how to measure their the outcomes, didn't know how to interact with others, and how to get jobs. And then Campus Life, or Student Affairs at BYU, provides services, activities, and experiences that support the mission of BYU. So we see ourselves as integral to the mission of BYU. And while historically we've seen us as supportive of learning experiences rather than directly involved in learning, Campus Life now recognizes that their contact with students includes opportunities to provide unique education and learning that both complement and supplement the experiences students have in the traditional classroom, and that this learning can be directly linked to the mission and aims of BYU education. So that's really quite important for us. We've been heavily involved in defining learning outcomes over the past 5 or 6 years, just like the rest of the university. All the academic colleges have been doing the same thing. And as we've worked on these learning outcomes, we've been very intentionally being able to review all of the programs and services that we offer and work out how successful or helpful they were and how our students were responding to them and if they were worthy of continued financial support and benefit. Research has shown that when classroom experiences are supplemented with whatever else happens in a student environment, numerous dimensions of that student are significantly impacted in a positive way. And then student affairs professionals strive to become experts, and this is a key word for us. We really do feel like we're experts in the areas that we work in of the students on their campuses. Every faculty member is an expert in some specialized area, and student affairs professionals should know more about their students than anybody else on campus. So in campus life at BYU, we have experts in organizing and advising student government volunteers. We have experts who are those who are just expert in advising at-risk students from a variety of backgrounds and ethnicities. We have experts in creating meaningful community service experiences. We have experts in disability law and the provision of reasonable accommodations. We have experts in student visa regulations and the federal immigration regulations to assist our international students. So we have all that expertise in our area of campus life. This is my plug for student affairs professionals being educators. So student affairs professionals, first and foremost, are educators, teachers outside the classroom and administrators of out-of-class learning opportunities which enhance the achievement of the educational mission of their institutions. If you think about it, if the university did not have very intentional goals for their student life area, they wouldn't give us a budget, they wouldn't hire any people, and that would be kind of difficult. However, we are often the first people to be looked at when there's a recession, when there needs to be cuts. Some other schools have had difficulties where they had maybe a budget cut of 20%, and most of that came out of the hide of their student affairs, student life area. At BYU, we have been very blessed, and we did not, while we participated in the hiring freeze, just like every other area on campus that took place a couple of years ago, we did not experience any forced redundancy or any rift. From our origins in American higher education during the 17th and 18th centuries, our predecessors were considered to be educators, that's faculty, outside the classroom, who had special administrative counseling skills which could transform resident student life and the extracurriculum into educational growth-producing environments. This has been really interesting. I always read the Chronicle, and I advise any of you, encourage any of you that are interested in a career in higher education to stay close to the Chronicle and use that as a tool to get up-to-date information about the profession. But in the Chronicle, just a couple of months ago, there was an article about how student affairs is really kind of an export business for America right now. And I know that when I was at university 20 years ago now in the UK, there was no such thing. There was no layer of student affairs professionals. We were left on our own to develop our own leadership skills at will, to do whatever we wanted to do, and there were not university activities put on for us or leadership programs for us to join in or community service programs. And so America really has been a leader in the world in this, and the article that I found in the Chronicle detailed how other countries are now saying, you know, it's really important for us to offer this kind of out-of-classroom education for students. And so they had interviewed a couple of people who were talking about how exportable their skills were and how they had enjoyed spending 3 to 5 years in a different location or even moving permanently to a different country to be able to serve at a university there and kind of be a pioneer in student affairs there. And finally, in the midst of a dynamic educational environment, we remain committed to our role as out-of-class educators and work collaboratively with faculty to develop all of our students. And I think that collaboration is the key to success. Part of this is knowing when administrative decisions end and when academic decisions begin. And if we know if we know our role well and we know what we're intended to do, then I don't think we will get into conflict with the academic side of the university. And I think it's really important that we do collaborate with our academic colleagues in all of the work that we do. So if you think you're interested in a career in student affairs, you will want to ask yourselves the following questions. So ask yourself, do I enjoy spending time in a campus environment? Clearly you do, otherwise you wouldn't be in the MPA program. But I do find it bizarre sometimes when I meet people that are in the profession of higher education administration, student affairs, and they really have a genuine dislike of students. If you don't like students, don't choose this career, because students they're the outcome, they're your raw material, they're your product. That's what you have to work with. And if you don't love students, do not choose this career. So do you enjoy spending time in a campus environment? Do you appreciate new challenges and the chance to acquire new skills? Do you enjoy planning and advertising for events? Do you crave an exciting and dynamic career? Do you enjoy college students and want to make a difference in the lives of young adults? And increasingly, we've got more non-traditional students coming back to school with the recession, and so I would add to that in the lives of young adults and older adults, adult learners and non-traditional students. And do you want to find a job where no 2 days are alike? And I can really testify that no 2 days are alike for me. Some days I go home absolutely emotionally spent and drained, depending on what I've had to do that day. Other days are an absolute dream, and most of the days are an absolute dream. It's a delight to come to BYU, to work with students, even when it's with challenging problems. I often meet with students, when people ask me what I do, my husband what I do, he says I work, oftentimes he'll say, she works with crazy students and naughty students. And that's not entirely true. I don't work that much with the Honor Code office, but I do see a lot of students who have some serious challenges or problems or impediments to them getting the prize, which is that graduation from BYU and getting that diploma. And sometimes there are hard things that have to be said. Sometimes we have to ask people to move along, or to change their major if things aren't working out, or to not volunteer in this program anymore, or to start doing something else. And so no 2 days really are alike. It's a very versatile job, and I have really enjoyed it. Principles of good student affairs practice. We talk about that a lot in our area, where we, again, I keep saying we take ourselves seriously, and we kind of do, and that's mainly because a lot of people don't know that student affairs exists as a discipline or an area. So we are big on hard skills. In some of the interviews this morning, I mentioned this, and I don't know if this is just a BYU phenomenon, but sometimes we find that people will come and say, I would be great to be the student activities coordinator or a multicultural student advisor, because I was a young women's president. And that is where I get all of my skill, that's all of my experience for this job. That's great, and they may well have wonderful experience that they've gotten from that calling experience, but at the same time, we're looking for hard skills. We're looking for a degree. We're looking for skills that have been honed. We're looking for people that can give presentations, that can run meetings, that can advise students, all of those kinds of things. And I do want to emphasize that the MPA is a good start for a career in higher education administration or student affairs. I did a quick poll of my division, and I worked out just over 10% of the people who work in campus life at BYU currently have an MPA. So I thought that was quite good. Okay, so we're expected to be able to advocate for students individually and systemically, engage students in active learning. Active learning is a thing, it's a term, so read more about that if you want to know more about that. Set and communicate high expectations for student learning. Collaborate with campus and community partners to design policies and programs that are student-centered. And that's an interesting thing as well. Sometimes in the summer, it's easy to, when there are so few students on campus, to say, gosh, this is such a nice place when the students are not here. But we have to remind ourselves the only reason we are here is to service the needs of students. And so we must be able to collaborate and never lose sight of the fact that our programs should be student-centered, not based on how fun is it for me to do my job if we do this new thing. Use systemic inquiry to improve student and institutional performance. Use resources effectively to achieve institutional missions and goals. I talked to some of you in the interview about zero-based budgets. A lot of the work that we do is with zero-based budgets, and that's difficult sometimes when you don't know how many people are going to come to your event or buy a ticket or that kind of thing. So definitely using resources effectively is a helpful tool. Forge educational partnerships that advance student learning. Build supportive and inclusive communities, and then have capacity to be student-centered but unfailingly loyal to the mission of your institution. We need to never lose sight of who we work for and what we're trying to do. So some examples of where you could work on a campus if you were in student affairs or higher education administration. Multicultural programs, student activities, Greek life, we don't have that at BYU, but many universities do. Residence life or housing, off-campus housing, very popular places for people to start out their careers. Lots and lots of people, lots of my professional colleagues started out in residence life as hall advisors and then moved their way up. Recreation and fitness centers are very big on university campuses these days, so there's quite a bit more employment there. Financial aid is huge and always has been. Honors program advising, women's centers and programs, student unions, which is most universities' version of the Wilkinson Center in student government. Judicial affairs, the honor code or student conduct is also very big. Student organization advising, admissions, athletic support services, alumni programs, and it goes on to a second slide. Student government advising, leadership development of students, career services, study abroad programs, putting those together. Wellness programs are a huge booming area right now. Records and registration, research and assessment, disability support services, veterans programs, again, that's a big growth area. New student orientation, human resources, international services, and many more. And almost all of these areas that I've mentioned, they all have their own professional association. So whatever we're doing, we're always seeking to kind of professionalize that and legitimize that to make it into a real profession. And I think we've done a nice job of that. So here's the real information that you want to see, right? The question you want to ask yourself is, can I feed my family and pay off my student loans with a career in higher education administration? And the answer is, it depends. You'll see, if you're coming in with a bachelor's degree, you're definitely on the lower end. Master's degree gives you a little bit of a leg up. And then doctoral degree, again, adds more earning potential. And you'll see some of these residence hall positions, they do tend to be the lower paid positions. I don't know why. Oftentimes that's because room and board are included, but they do tend to be the lower paid positions. But you'll see there, so that's kind of hopefully helpful. And hopefully that doesn't put you all off. So anyway, once you get into more senior student affairs positions, then you're looking at, student affairs vice presidents and that kind of thing. Most of them are going to be in the doctoral area. Most universities are looking for, doctoral level at that vice president level. And so you'll see the salaries are not bad at all. The director level positions are also not too bad. And really, I think as you spend more time in the profession and move on and move up and get longevity, then I think that really helps to increase your earning potential. And also, some of you may be thinking, I'm doing this MPA and then I'm done. Never say never. I thought I was done after my undergraduate degree in geography from Oxford, and since then I've done the MPA and I've done a PhD. And really it's been delightful to be able to say, I have these now, and these are my tickets. This is what I need to ride this train, as opposed to saying, it's not fair, I can't ever get another job, or I have peaked in my profession when I'm 30 because I choose not to get an additional degree. So never say never. And then just a bit about kind of traditional career path. As I said, lots of people start out in residence life. Even when student affairs departments were cutting employees, there's always going to be a need for resident assistants, hall advisors, and that kind of thing. And so residence hall areas, we're still hiring. You'll see oftentimes, even though the salary's not amazing, and they're saying master's preferred, you're getting benefits, you get an apartment, you get a meal plan. I'm not sure how good that would be, but anyway. And then tuition remission is a wonderful, wonderful thing. That's how I've been able to do my education, my additional education since I arrived at BYU. And anytime you can get, your tuition paid as a benefit, that's a great thing. And typically you don't have to pay tax, although I understand there are sometimes when you do. And then early career professional and associate director, definitely looking for a master's degree plus some solid work experience, and your salary's gone up quite a bit. An associate dean, you're looking there at director of student conduct, you're looking at more work experience, definitely a master's, doctorate preferred, you've still got the full benefits, you've got the tuition remission, and they're looking for budget skills and that kind of thing. And then your senior student affairs officer there with the doctorate. Okay. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my career path. I did my undergraduate degree in geography from Oxford, and I did not know what I was going to do. I had no clue what to do. So I decided to do a postgraduate year in education because my father and my mother and my two older sisters were all teachers. And so that's what I had grown up with, and I thought I would join the family business, which was to become a high school teacher. I taught high school geography for 1 year, and realized immediately that although I did enjoy it, and I felt like I was quite good at it, that this was not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I was still single. I didn't know if I was going to be married or when I was going to be married, and so I knew that I needed to have a career plan, and I was quite intentional about that. And then one day, I was in the library, the school library, and I came across in the British version of the Chronicle of Higher Education, where all the jobs are, came across this job at Oxford in admissions. It was the school's liaison officer, and I knew that that was the job for me. And I got that job and went and was kind of like a traveling missionary for the university. Oxford had suffered for a very long time with an image problem that you could only go there if you were very, very bright or smart, and you had an awful lot of money or some kind of aristocratic title. And so my role was to travel around the UK, visiting with different schools and colleges to let them know that it was okay, that you didn't have to be very wealthy, and I was a good example of that. I had come from a working class home. We lived in what you would call here a townhouse. We had 3 bedrooms and 5 kids, and no washing machine, no dishwasher, 1 car, everything was secondhand, and I had gone to Oxford, and my younger sister also went to Oxford too. And so I traveled around and had a wonderful time. And I really felt like that was my dream job, had I not met my husband, who was a bit more dreamy than my dream job, so I had to marry him. So there you go. And so I moved here, and I did struggle for a little while when I came, because I had left a job that I loved. It wasn't that I didn't have a job. I left a job that I loved and came here, and immediately started applying at UVU and BYU because they were natural places for me to apply, since my work was in education, my work experience. I got a job after a couple of months as the tutoring coordinator at BYU in the BYU student government office, and ran a tutoring program there for 7 years. That was quite a long 7 years. During that time, I did the MPA, the executive MPA, which was great. But after about 4 years, I felt like I could do my job with my eyes closed, and I started to look for different opportunities. I applied for different jobs. I thought that I really liked HR because I'd had exposure to that through the MPA program, and couldn't seem to get a job in HR. And then finally, after I was so patient, not that I didn't grumble, but I was patient, I got hired as the director of the Center for Service and Learning, which was pioneering academic service learning at the time. Now the focus of that area is on community service, and that was a great opportunity for me. That was a promotion and increase in responsibility to be a director level, and I really enjoyed that. And then after about 2.5 years in that position, a brand new position of a new associate dean opened up, and I applied. I had not finished my doctorate at this point, but I was close. And I knew that I had to parlay that almost finished, that ABD-ness, into I am going to be done any minute. Any minute you hire me and I'll be done with my doctorate. And so that's what I did. I got hired and I was done as soon as I could. So one thing that you do need to bear in mind in higher education administration, you'll often find that your position evolves over time. And when I say evolve, the subtext is you will get many, many things added to your role, to your job description, that aren't necessarily written in your job description when you got the job and you're just expected to do them. So for example, under my purview at this time, I have the Center for Service and Learning, I have Women's Services and Resources, I have Multicultural Student Services, International Student Services, and I have all the Technology and Learning Outcomes Assessment for Campus Life. In addition to that, I sit on various committees. I'm on the International Admissions Committee, I'm on the Women's Conference Committee, I chair the International Student Services Committee, I'm on various policy committees. I do a lot of policy work and committee work. And in addition to that, the university recently appointed me to be the Title IX coordinator for BYU. So I also have the pleasure of handling and investigating unlawful gender-based or sex discrimination behavior. So that's all fun, and that's all been added into my current job. And I make the time and I schedule my time so that I'm able to do that. Just a quick word about professional organizations. In student affairs, there are two, NASPA and ACPA. NASPA is the one that BYU is a member of, an institutional member of. They provide high-quality professional development, strong policy advocacy, and substantive research to inform student affairs practice. There's over 13,000 members worldwide, and a graduate student can join for $37 a year. If you're interested in a career in student affairs, check out the NASPA and the ACPA website. They've got some good information about careers in the profession, and they do have an annual conference. You'll see they have this, the third bullet there, the placement exchange. Many graduate students will go there and find employment, and it's a great way to get your resume out there, get your face seen, and that kind of thing. Let's see. The other one is ACPA. They tend to be a bit more liberal, and so for BYU, that doesn't fit as well for us, but I have been to several ACPA conferences, and they've been very helpful and good. And again, they do have graduate student membership, and they also have their own version of the career exchange or placement exchange at their annual conference as well. So ways to get involved. Some of you, as we were interviewing this morning, asked what could you do to make yourselves more marketable or attractive for this kind of a position. Definitely read up on NASPA and ACPA and know what they stand for and know what they are. Consider attending one of their national or regional conferences if you can. Get into the habit of reading their publications, including professional journals and associated websites. Both NASPA and ACPA have a standard professional journal, and then they have different offshoots of those journals as well. And then electronic journals are also a growing area for both of these organizations, so that's important too. Definitely add the Chronicle and Inside of Higher Ed to your favorites list so you can keep abreast of issues that colleges and universities are dealing with. This is really important. I find reading the Chronicle each week is one of the most informative parts of my week. And perhaps BYU is not struggling or challenged with a particular issue, but certainly other schools are, and maybe it's something that is on its way to BYU, something that we'll have to grapple with in the future. Think about internship or a similar opportunity that will allow you to explore a career in student affairs and give you more exposure. We have a very small internship program in the summer in campus life at BYU. We take 3 or 4 student interns, and we have had a couple of people from the MPA. Typically we get people from outside of BYU who are in higher education, master's degree programs that complement this kind of work, and they'll come and have a 3 or 4 month experience with us, and it's really been quite nice, and it's helped us to stay focused and current as well as we work with students from other schools. And then pick the brain of campus life professionals and seek mentors that can help you chart your career trajectory moving forward. Think about that now. Be very intentional. Look at org charts that you can find online. Make calls, stop by and visit people. And set up a time to go and interview. I've had several people come and say, I want to do what you do. Tell me how to do it. And so we have this kind of conversation where I talk about student affairs and how to get involved. It is going to be hard to get into student affairs if you have no solid work experience, whether it's an internship or an actual, maybe a student job or something in the area prior to going into it. Another thing you can do is another degree. If you can stand it, depending on what your career ambitions are, a doctoral degree or a professional certificate or something like that can provide you with mobility to move through the administrative ranks. Again, you do not want to be 10 years into your career and realizing that you have peaked because of the career path that you have chosen and there's nowhere else for you to go. There are doctoral programs available that you can see on the NASPA website, and then this Postmaster Certificate in a specialty area, those are a growing trend. There aren't enough places in all of the doctoral programs for everyone that wants to do one, and there is also not enough faculty and that kind of thing. And so having these Postmaster Certificate programs available that help kind of professionalize a person some more and give them more expert skills are really helpful. And right now these are offered in academic advisement, enrollment management, auxiliary services, and housing. So these are professional organizations offering these. And at BYU right now we do offer the academic advisement Postmaster Certificate specialty, which has really helped to professionalize our academic advisors at BYU and help them to realize that they do have special skills and something important to offer, and it's not just a job that anyone could do who wanted to sit at a desk all day. Some of the perks of the profession. If you're not sold yet, then some of the perks. It's a dynamic profession that's always changing. There's always something new, a new policy, a new request, some interesting student behavior. There's always something new. You get to work with students from diverse backgrounds at the crossroad of their lives. This is really, really a wonderful thing. There's a broad range of career possibilities, over 4,000 campuses to choose from. And while people do tend to stay a long time at BYU, I think that's just a BYU-specific phenomenon, and there's a lot of mobility between different schools in the student affairs, higher education realm as people get a hall advisor job at one school and then move to a school in a different state to be a residence life coordinator, that kind of thing. Opportunities to publish and present. You should definitely take advantage of those opportunities, especially when you're fresh out of your master's degree programs, when you're still interested in crunching numbers and doing pivot tables and all that kind of lovely stuff. Then you should do it now and use those skills to dazzle potential employers to say, I can crunch your numbers, I can do this wonderful presentation for you, and I can write papers and articles. Limitless possibilities for career growth. And then the fringe benefits like additional education, comprehensive medical coverage, good retirement plans, access to all of the cultural, recreational, social opportunities that a college campus has to offer. And my husband will often say to me, there's absolutely no point in living in Provo if you're not connected with BYU. And I'm inclined to agree with him sometimes. You know, if BYU were not in Provo, then there'd be no college sport, there'd be no theater events. I mean, it would be really a stark stop, little place to live. And so being connected with a college campus is really a wonderful thing and has great benefits. And then you get an awful lot of free t-shirts in student life, because there's a t-shirt for every program and everything. And I brought some free t-shirts today. I know that, I hear that you are used to getting free iPads in the Mary School. That's what people tell me, right? So anyway, I brought some lovely shirts, and so if you have questions, I'll give you a shirt. Oh, there you go. Yes.
I had a couple, but one of them, well, as you can tell, the salary slides brought up a lot of interest, and we were having a hard time keeping quiet because it seemed not very logical. So it was interesting to see
You
that.
mean they weren't all linear?
Yes. For
Yeah.
example, an associate's degree makes $43,000, and a doctorate makes 48, and a master's is 40. So that didn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Can you maybe explain why that is?
So it could be a typo, but I don't think it is, because my graduate student assistant is very precise. What I wonder if it is based on the numbers in the sample. So if you had a smaller number of assistant directors of student activities in that sample, you might end up with a lower salary, especially if they were all like say community colleges or something like that. So I think it's just a blip based on the samples that we use. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it seems to happen a lot, so it's really confusing.
So
Why
how-
am I getting a master's degree when I make my money with an associate's degree?
So, oh, you mean like here, like 61? Okay, yeah, I see that.
It just doesn't.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense.
And I think maybe the anomaly is with the associate's degree, because in campus life we have less than a handful of people who have associate's degrees who have worked in their positions for a very long time, who are now, they came in before the profession was really professionalized in a sense. They hung on to those jobs, and now they're sitting on bigger salaries than people who are coming in with master's degrees. And like any profession, campus, student affairs and higher education administration suffers from compression as much as anywhere. So if I got fired from my job today and hired again tomorrow, I could probably make a lot more money. But I choose to keep my job.
Thank you.
Yes?
So, BYU campus is a beautiful place, and we live in a gorgeous area as well. So, for my other bachelor's, I attended a different school, and so it's great to be here, but I noticed that there's a few differences in the campus life activities that are provided for students. Like, you go online to the calendar, and there's very limited activities that the students can go to. And so I was wondering, is there, like, resources that aren't available? I mean, like, outdoor activities or social or fitness, wellness. I was wondering your thoughts.
Okay, so, well, I would respectfully disagree that there aren't that many activities. Each of these shirts is from a different program or a different event or different thing, and I got from different departments. What it might be is that some departments are not advertising their events through the university calendar. I shouldn't say this because I'm on camera, but I don't like the university calendar. It is so cluttered and ridiculous. I don't like the format of it. So I would, if I were a student, I would get my information from websites or Twitter feeds or Facebook pages or that kind of thing. There are an awful lot of events going on. Lots of them through student life, through multicultural student services, international services, through BYU MPA and through the Center for Service and Learning, but also the Student Alumni Association puts on events, Student Honor Association puts on events. So lots and lots of different events, and maybe we just need to do a better job of getting the word out. There are also some events that the university says will happen, and they provide resources for those events. For example, like new student orientation. The university, that's very important to the university's mission. It's very important for new students. And so the university says it will happen. But other things like the homecoming dances. So I think the homecoming dances are almost on their way out. Students are not looking for dance opportunities to go and dance anymore. And so over time, those may well fade out because it's based on student interest. And so student leaders who are planning those events are going to say, you know what, we're not going to have the homecoming dance this year, we're going to have a homecoming barbecue instead, and people can just sit and chat and that kind of thing.
Okay, so since I've been really craving to do some things on
You
campus.
should come and see me.
Okay.
Come and see me, and I will take you next door to the student government area, and you'll be able to see all of the events.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry. You might have to catch them all.
Yeah.
Yes?
This is kind of follow up to what you're just saying, but to what extent does the student life administration involve students in as employees and volunteers, as well as in planning events or the things that are provided on campus?
It really depends. I don't think it's an even split, but we do have student support staff, so student employees, student assistants, that kind of thing. And then we also have student volunteers. So some departments like student leadership and BYOSA, the student government, they're staffed primarily by volunteers, and they have just a handful of student staff. Those volunteers are advised by coordinators in that area who will sit down with them and they'll come and say, this is what we'd like to do. The advisor will say, well, this is the budget. Remember what was done last year. Let's look at the history. Let's see what facilities are available for us to schedule. Let's, do a survey and see what student interest is like and what students want. So there are some areas that do use student volunteers, and we lead and guide those volunteers and provide them with the skills that they need to put on those events. Other areas, we hire and train students to put on events. So we have, in the same department as the student leadership, BYOSA, where we have volunteers putting on events, we also have the events management team that puts on events that the university says will happen. And so they put on those events each year, and those students are paid programmers to put on those events and to evaluate them. So it's not an even split, but most of our areas in campus life have some student volunteers, some program or service where they're using student volunteers, and then some paid student staff as well. Yes, sorry, right next to you.
Okay. So what do you think the biggest challenges for student affairs here at BYU?
That's a really good question, because from my vantage point, things are going well and we're enjoying it. I think one of the biggest challenges is perhaps not an identity crisis, but that people don't know what we are or what we're supposed to do. And so we have to do a better job of getting our mission out there and explaining what it is we're trying to achieve, which is to prepare students for service in future careers in their homes, in their families, and in their wards. And so I think we could do a better job of getting that message out so that people don't say, I often hear people in the hallways saying, what does that BYU say? What is that student government? I don't even know what it is. They just seem to spend money and they don't really put anything on and what's going on. So I think we could do a better job of selling ourselves, probably. I'm just going to get really bad. If you could just catch them all and pass them on. Yes?
How does these positions change if you're working for a private versus a public university?
And that's a good question. So this information came from the Chronicle of Higher Education. They do a salary survey each year. And typically, all of the public schools, because that's public information, will have their information then. Some of the private schools will offer their information. BYU does not offer their information, make their information available. So when I look at the salary survey, I look at it state-specific, and I always look at what the U is paying, and then I look at what like Weber or UVU are paying. And there's usually quite a big difference between like a junior college type field and a research university. So it's hard to say. At BYU, though, probably you've learned, if they had their human resource class yet? Okay, so when you have your human resource class, you might well hear that BYU has a policy of intentionally paying below the mean. And so that's what we know, and we don't discuss our salaries at BYU. So we know that BYU pays below the mean. That's kind of what we know. Oh, okay.
All right. My question is, how many openings do you generally see in Utah? If you decide to go into this profession, would it be very easy to stay local, or would it be much easier if you were to say move to another state? How does it work demographically?
It really depends. There are 13 institutions of higher education, including like UCAT in Utah. That's a very small number compared to what you have, like say California and then back east. Some of those really tiny area-wise geographical states have lots and lots of institutions with big numbers of students. So it really depends. I think that the biggest thing is working out what area you want to work in. It's always a red flag for me when I see the same application coming in for lots of different positions. And so I wonder, does this person just want a job at BYU, or do they really want to work as a multicultural advisor? Oh, and then this week they want to work as an international advisor. Oh, and now they want to be a secretary. You know what I mean? When I see them coming through, and the way our job applications are set up now, it's really easy for people to just press submit. And I would caution you to use some prudence and self-control there, and don't just apply for everything, because we know there are people who just apply for everything, and it's just hard to take them seriously when last week they wanted this job and they were fervent and zealous, and suddenly this week they want another job. So.
Makes sense.
Sorry. Yes, blue shirt. Yes.
When it comes to, in this field, associate dean or dean positions, do you need to have a PhD to get that far up the ladder, or could we get there with an MPA?
I know of deans of students and associate deans. We are administrative deans. We're not faculty, so that's one difference for us as opposed to other, deans of colleges, academic colleges. I do know deans at other universities and associate deans with master's degrees. At BYU, I know it was very important. So the job was master's required, doctorate preferred. But most of the people that were finalists for the position either had doctorates or were ABD. So that's not even going to get close. I'm sorry.
I don't think some people know what ABD is. Can you just...
ABD is an acronym that we use when you're working on a doctoral degree, and it means all but dissertation. So you've done all your coursework, and all you've got to do is write that really long, thick volume of work and do your original research. And for a lot of people, that's the sticking point. For many doctoral programs, going to class is just like going to class in the MPA program. You show up at class, you do your homework, you do your presentations, you hand in your assignments, and you get your grades. Once you get onto that original research, it is so much more difficult to engage yourself and to apply yourself to that and make yourself do it when there's no one except maybe your advisor who might email you once a semester and say, hey, how's chapter 3 coming? That kind of thing. Yes?
So I worked a lot for the SOAR in my undergrad, and I was actually curious because I've heard of some changes that are being made in the office and different things. So I love that it says that you take into account a lot of like what the students' needs are, what they feel, stuff like that.
Right.
How do you find out what those things are? Like, how do you know how to affect that population?
That's an excellent question. We do research. We read a lot of the literature that other schools have done on working with at-risk populations or people from different ethnic minorities. And then we also, are prayerful and go with what we feel that those changes that need to be. So I've been very, very much involved in those changes as they've gone forward, as I have supervised the Multicultural Student Services Office. We just hired a new director. And we've been very intentional in what we've been asking for. And what we're able to do is to look at who was coming to our SOAR program and work out maybe we wanted a different population at our SOAR program, or maybe we wanted to tweak it a little bit, or maybe we wanted to have our advisors focus on advisement instead of having them trying to run a luau as well as trying to advise 300 students at the same time. So we've been very intentional, we've been prayerful, we've looked at the literature, and then we've also worked with the office employees to provide them with the training that they need to step up to whatever the new thing is that we were asking them to do. Yes?
So when
And it's interesting, whenever I'm interviewing a candidate for a job, I will typically have a student group, a student panel interview the candidate. And I've learned over time that I have to be very clear about what I'm asking them to do, because I've had many times students just be absolutely flawed when we didn't pick the candidate that they chose. Well, they're part of the process. The information that they're providing and feeding to us is important, but we're still going to make our own decision based on the research. And again, I mentioned this a couple of times in the interviews this morning, my personal philosophy on student affairs is what it's about needs, not wants. And sometimes students want things or think they want things, but we need to be in the business, I believe we need to be in the business of providing them with what they need as opposed to what they want. Okay? Okay. Yes, black suit.
So you said you have a PhD, you're a very active professional society, and you consider yourself to be educators. And so do you do your own research ever, or do you publish?
Yes. So I published last year in the NASPA online journal. It was like a 3-volume novel. It was a 3-part article that talked about learning outcomes at BYU and how we struggled to get our people even willing to consider doing learning outcomes, and then what the results were when we measured our learning outcomes. So I've done that. I've presented at various conferences. Oftentimes at conferences you're presenting about best practice. So you'll preface it with the context will be the research, the planet research, and then you'll move it to the best practice or this new program idea that you've got, and then every other school is calling you because they want to hear about that. But yes, I have published, and it's hard because you've got so many other things to do, and publishing is like an extra thing. As an administrator, it's not publish or perish, it's probably publish and get behind in your work, in the rest of your work. And so you need to make time for that. I often will take journals home with me and read them. And I have a folder that I call ideas for articles that sits gathering dust most of the time. But usually around Christmas time, when I've got some freed up time, I will sit and look at that and think about what could I do, who could I collaborate with, and try and identify if we have maybe new people in the department that have skills that I want to tap into to get an article or that kind of thing. I'm sorry. Yes, the red shirt.
Okay, I was wondering what kind of a role social media plays in student affairs, and if you've noticed any changes as social media has become more popular.
Yes, and quite a growing role, and yes, I've noticed some changes. We struggled. We're at BYU, our change moves slowly, and it's very intentional, and we're very careful about what we do. And so when Facebook, Twitter, all that kind of thing, even Google Docs was a problem for one of my areas. I mean, that was just really scary. Google Docs. I know, it seems funny, but it was. And so we had to be very clear about what we expected from Facebook pages. Our administrators had to do research, and by doing research, I mean talking to students who knew Facebook inside and out to say, you know what, you can have a private group, or you can have an administrator that moderates the comments, that kind of thing. We had to work out that we were probably okay, or we could probably cope with the limited advertising that was showing up, and we kind of did lots of different samples to see what that advertising content was, and were we going to be okay with that. Text messaging is really antiquated now, I know, but we were quite excited to do that 4 or 5 years ago. So yeah, most of our departments now have Facebook groups and are actively always looking to manage those. One of our departments let me know a couple of weeks ago that they had found 5 groups in the name of their department, and only one of them was the real bona fide group. And so you had to find out how to go and shut those down. So that's definitely what students are wanting. That's definitely the way they want to connect and get their information. A lot of our areas have Twitter feeds now, and it's really quite important. Sorry. Yes?
So you've talked a little bit about how you try to involve students in like the decision-making processes in the different activities and stuff. So what role do some of these educational administrators play in the decision-making process? Like how do they like
some of those who work in our student government are advising students, student volunteers, student leaders, and so we like to have them not be too prescriptive and have a prescribed idea about what the event's going to look like when it's really supposed to be student-led. So if it's supposed to be student-led, we're looking to the student. We would definitely step in and make a decision or do a course correction if things were going in the wrong direction, or if things were just going wrong, we'd do that. Some of our other areas, let's see, like our international student services area, they work a lot with immigration compliance, but also helping international students to acclimate to BYU, to learn what the social norms are at BYU and in America, to understand more about the educational system. And in that area, they're not making, they're bound by federal policy and federal regulations as far as the student visas are concerned, but they're often making policy decisions about international students that will affect all international students. For example, the deposit policy that we brought in a few years ago, which was a real problem for a lot of students. Suddenly they had to come up with $4,000. That came out of our international services office and came up the reporting line as a way to help students help themselves be more financially viable. So it really depends on what area you're in and how much legislation there already is or how much BYU policy there already is. I'm going to go, there was one on the back. Brenton, yes?
I was just wondering,
Did you get yours? You didn't get yours. I'm going to throw it. It's angled, so I don't want to hurt you. Sorry. Okay, yes, sorry.
What's the crossover? I mean, once you get into this field, this profession, I mean, well, even before, is there any crossover from other sectors coming in? Do you bring people from other areas and other people in the profession now who maybe transition into other areas that aren't dealing with university?
Yeah, we've hired several events planners from industry that have wanted to come and work in our student activities area. We've hired like immigration professionals, those who have worked at like border patrol and that kind of thing, into international advisor positions. Let's see. We've hired quite a few JDs. They work really well, and this may sound, I don't sound bad, but they work really well like in our honor code office. So even though our honor code is an educational process and not a judicial process, that kind of JD background, so sometimes people come with a legal background, that helps. Let's see. Yeah, that's about all I can.
So mostly coming in, not so much transitioning out to...
We do have some turnover. Some positions have more turnover than others. High burnout positions are our student activities, where you're constantly with students and always on retreats and lots of evening and weekend work. A lot of those people will go and be events planners and use those skills that way. Some people just leave and go into business, or consulting is a big one that I've seen. Yeah. Okay, I just don't even want to damage your child, or if it is your... I have no more t-shirts left, but I have capacity to answer more questions if there are any. Yes?
I just have kind of a fun one. Earlier in a presentation you said that
Yes.
You said in your field that you're experts of the students on your campuses. So I would assume that you're an expert of us. So I wondered what you could share as an expert on us. What can you tell us about ourselves? Or, I mean, if you're the expert, tell us like what we're like, maybe how we can be better, or the great things about us. I don't know.
We're experts in...
Tell us what we're bad at. Tell us what we're bad at. Tell us what we're good at. I think it would be interesting to hear from someone who's an expert on us.
So I'm going to tell you something. So if you remember with that slide, I talked about we have experts in organizing student activities. So I don't think that we're experts in necessarily the whole student. But let me tell you about some of my expertise. So I work closely with the International Student Services Office, their direct report to me. And so I can tell you a lot of things about our international student population. I can tell you the most frequent countries that they're coming from. I can tell you a lot of the challenges that they face. I could tell you when they come and visit with me, they say one thing, but they sometimes mean another. So that's really common. I could tell you that our international student, our graduate rate for international students is maybe not where I think it should be. I could tell you that international students tend to have financial problems much more than domestic students. I could tell you that most of our international students would prefer to stay at BYU than go home at the end. And I could also tell you that a lot of our international students live on the edge because they're concerned about their GPA, they're concerned about finances, and they maybe don't get involved as much. So fewer of our student leaders than we would expect based on their proportions are international students, and fewer of our more of the people who are working in a massive percentage of the students on campus that are working in custodial and dining services are international students. And so those are some trends that I'm aware of as I've become an expert in our international student population that I would like to see change. I would like to see every student, regardless of where they're from, be able to access that full BYU experience.
As a follow-up question, as we're interacting with them, we have a few internationals and hopefully we interact with other internationals as well in our experience here. Do you feel there's anything that we can do to help with that, since you're an expert in that field? What can we do to help with those challenges that you face?
I think what you have to bear in mind is that for many international students, especially with all the group work that you do in the Marriott School, group work is an alien thing. In the UK, if you help someone else, if you work collaboratively with someone else, everything is on a curve, and so you push yourself down if you help someone else. You would never dream of helping someone else. You would never dream of working in a group. And so it's really an alien thing to a lot of international students. I would, if you have international students in your group, I would definitely embrace them, help them understand how group work works, help them understand how working together elevates everyone. It's not just one person that rises to the top. I would help them with jargon and terms. I meet with a lot of international students who have excellent language skills, who maybe don't understand a lot of the BYU jargon or the Mormon jargon or the just American slang. And that's a problem. And then I would also invite anyone that you know that's international to get involved. Invite them to parties, invite them to gatherings, events, that kind of thing. Because also the largest percentage of our international students are also not of our faith. And so that's the biggest segment on campus that are not LDS. And so they need to be included. Otherwise they'll find themselves out kind of on the periphery and the margins, wondering, why did I come here? You know, I'm getting a good education, but socially and culturally, it's not that big of a deal. It's not that great. Yes?
One more, and then we'll...
On that same line, like, what are the opportunities for international students to actually get jobs in higher education and student affairs and all that?
So, are you an international student? Is that where I said? Great. So, you'll probably already know about OPT, Optional Practical Training, which is an opportunity that you have at the end of your degree program. And I would definitely pursue that. And then I want to tell you that I've seen many international students get jobs in higher education and student affairs. Not necessarily a ton of them at BYU, right out of college, but certainly I meet with international students who will say, I want to work in this profession, and they will work out a path, they'll get a job, and then they'll find their way back to BYU at some point. So yes, I think it's highly possible. You have extra things to bring to the table. Maybe you have an extra language, you have extra life experience, different life experience in a different country. Those are all helpful, especially if you work in study abroad programs, or students, if you were working with international students yourself. Those are all helpful things. And so we have I'd say a handful of people in our department right now that are, began as international, because at some point most people cease to be international. They, get permanent residency or citizenship or an H-1B or whatever. And so most people will move in that direction. But I think you certainly have something unique to offer, and if you can package it correctly and in an attractive way, I think you can be really successful.